Hi, I'm Brent Baldwin. I'm about to read an excerpt of my story, The Disposition Matrix. Yevgeny slouched before a computer screen inside a trailer that smelled of hot solder and dog piss. Between him and the screen, his weapons officer for the last 3 months lay with her head on her paws. She cast a baleful eye on Yevgeny as he tore open a package of chicken and rice plov. Dogs eat dog food. Yevgeny shoveled in a mouthful of rice. It needed salt and pepper and cyanide because Putin's grave was he sick of plov. He made it halfway through the meal before his stomach started to churn. The UAV posting was supposed to be safe, a favor called in by his grandfather to protect his only grandson from the war. It will be close to the front, grandfather had told him, but not too close. Grandfather hadn't told him of the nightmares from watching so many lives snuffed out of existence. So this is a story about duty, expectations, and the burden of morality. Our protagonist here is Yevgeny, who's a technician that maintains the flight computers for a killer drone. It's also Yana, the dog who keeps him from damaging those computers that are actually doing the flying for the drone. And then we have some distant characters as well. There's a target who's a terrorist suspect. There are some civilians around that target who kind of come into the line of fire later on. We have Yevgeny's command, who are distant and giving him orders and actually, commanding the drone to launch its missiles. And then looming is his grandfather, who got him the position and weighs upon him, from a vast distance. So Yevgeny's not really a drone pilot. He's a technician that runs the computers, and his job is just to keep the drones up and running. His duty is basically to sit by and let the distant command do whatever they need to do, to observe the terrorists, to launch missiles at the terrorists. And the dilemma comes in because they find a suspect. They have a target, and the suspect goes into a building with civilians nearby. And Yevgeny can follow the duty of his grandfather, of the distant men who are commanding this war, or he can follow his own conscience. So it then gets complicated because the dog is there as well. He can't just touch the machine and make it go away. The dog is blocking him from interfering with the orders from command. So I reread this story this past week after I saw your invitation for this interview, and I think maybe this is the peak. Maybe this is the hardest decision I've put in. But I think that the big thing for me has been being more intentional about the characters and about the dilemmas that I put into it. And it's about preventing the easy decision. We always want to be nice to our characters. I think that's kind of a writerly vice. And as you grow as a writer, you have to learn how to be harder for them, put them into positions where they have no good options, or the best options are challenging. And it's a thing that, as you think about it, you plan a story, you structure a story, and you remember that your readers want to be surprised. They want to be delighted. They want that surprising yet inevitable ending. So you have to push on the character and find what they would do naturally, and not just what the narrative needs, but what the character would do and the situation would demand, and try to find that right decision for them, as difficult as it might be. So I'll talk about two, actually. The first one that sprang to mind was the book and film Sophie's Choice, about a mom who must choose between her two children. And it is absolutely a heart-wrenching story about the Holocaust, and honestly, it's a downer. There's just no good way around it. But if you want an example of putting a character into a position to make a horrific decision, that's an example. But there's actually one that I found more recently. I think it was actually in Fireside in March of this year. And it's a story called Contract Witch by Elizabeth Cobb. I read it. It's a piece of flash. It's about 1,000 words. And it just has stuck with me for the last month. And it's a really interesting story to me, both personally. I feel like it packs quite a punch. But also professionally as a writer, because it's very cleverly constructed. The entire story takes space in between asking a question and answering a question. And, the ask of the question is, should we just plow ahead and destroy half of East Texas, or should we make a decision that has mild to significant professional consequences, and maybe save half of East Texas? But what it really is it's a story about the precariousness of joblessness in America. It's a story about technology. It's especially a story about being a young woman in technology. It's about having a choice between doing the right and difficult thing and the wrong but safe for you thing. Throughout this story, I read it and I kept expecting, I thought, I know how this is going to end. I know where this is going to go. I want to see how we get there, right? Like, that's kind of the adventure. It's not just what is the ending, but it's the journey along the way. And the journey was great. But I thought, this is a narrative making a promise on how this young lady is going to resolve the problem in her office. And then it goes in a direction I didn't expect. It was a direction that you read the last line of it, because the last line of the story really packs quite a punch, and it makes you reflect, or made me reflect at least, on myself, on some of the decisions that I've made, things in my own career and how I've treated people in my career, and I found it to just be brilliant. So, Contract Witch by Elizabeth Cobb in the March 2021 edition of Fireside Fiction. So I'll give a shout out to Suzanne, who was the editor at Flash Fiction Online in 2015. So when you read the Disposition Matrix, it's a story that I edited a few times before I submitted it, which I encourage anyone that's new to submitting fiction to do. But it's also a story that went through multiple revisions, and it was my first experience working with an editor who wanted significant revisions to a story, and she really pushed me. The story is what it is today because I had a vision for what the story was about, but she had a vision for how to make it better. And it really was a great experience to work with a professional editor, an experienced editor, and to level up my own craft by learning from them as we made a story better together.